This is Sarnia Lambton Daily for Tuesday, May 26th. Good evening, I'm Terry Doyle. On the weekend, Ontario Premier Doug Ford called for more widespread testing for COVID-19. Now, local officials have put measures in place to accommodate that. We are joined now by Laurie Zimmer, Vice President of Operations for Bluewater Health. And Laurie, an announcement came out earlier this afternoon in regards to testing in Sarnia Lambton. What has been announced?
Yes, we were able to announce that we have access centers open for the ability for any resident in Sarnia Lambton to have a test if they choose to. We have several opportunities for testing. One's at the Twin Bridges Nurse Practitioner-led outreach clinic. A Central Family Health team in Petrolia. Our Indigenous health centers are testing their residents on site. That's not for all public, but mainly for their own residents and their First Nations peoples. And the Grand Bend Community Health Center is available for a lot of the northern folks that live in the northern area of Lambton County can access that center.
So what is the difference now where it sounds like this is going to be now more widespread access to testing?
Yes, it's just the ability that, as the Premier has provided an opportunity to provide access to people who wish to have a test done. What happens if you have symptoms, so if you have any symptoms, you need to absolutely have the test done and isolate yourself for 24 hours until the result comes back. If you have no symptoms and you still want a test done, that's fine. Just self-monitor and make sure that you're not having a fever or cough, and make sure you're practicing your social distancing and encouraging all those hand washing opportunities. So we continue to follow the same practices as public health has outlined for us.
Laura, I know there are some specific hours and people can certainly look into those, and also calling ahead is preferred. Is one of the concerns, I know Dr. Ranaday mentioned it as well, is being concerned of sort of mixing healthy people with maybe people who are infected already?
Yes, absolutely. So that's why it's so important to call ahead. And over the phone, the assessment centers will probably be asking the similar questions that they have around screening. And if those individuals are symptomatic, they certainly want to prioritize those folks so that they can have access, and also provide opportunity for people to get a test that aren't having symptoms but want to test. And so it's really important that we separate those individuals and to keep them safe and healthy.
Are there certain people who maybe, let's say they don't have any symptoms right now, but maybe they've been exposed to certain things, or any situations where maybe someone should even more consider going to get a test?
Again, following the symptoms, if you're not feeling well and you have a cough, a sudden cough, a fever, there's lots of different symptoms that people have been exhibiting. So if you're feeling that you want to test, please call the assessment centers to make a scheduled appointment. And again, the assessment centers will screen and prioritize you as required. So if you need to come in, they'll make sure you get an appointment to do so in a timely way.
I guess one thing that I was just reading from the release that came from Bluewater Health as well is, of course, this doesn't go back in time. You may have had this a month ago and recovered. This looks at, obviously, your state right now.
That's absolutely correct. So if you felt that you were exposed to someone that was positive a month ago, that does not show up on this test. The test will determine what's happening currently in your situation according to your symptoms.
This has obviously brought people together. Take me through the process to bring these community groups and partners together to pull this off.
I really do want to emphasize and congratulate and acknowledge all the work, all the community partners that have come together, primary care, public health, EMS, Bluewater Health staff who have volunteered to go out and test, and all the testing that has been done in long-term care and retirement homes in congregate settings across Sarnia Lambton. There was no hesitation. All of these partners came together and talked about how can we, and they went ahead and worked with us so collaboratively to make this happen. So I want to thank them very much for all their support and supporting the residents of Sarnia Lambton. Absolutely.
Laurie, what about someone who has some mobility challenges and getting to a center could be difficult for them?
Yes, absolutely. There are opportunities through transportation with CareLinks and Leo. They have so those could be available to them if they call. They again schedule the appointment. Let the assessment centers know around if there's any issues with disability, and so that they can make arrangements within their own centers to help support those individuals.
So someone gets tested. What's the process to find out, first of all, obviously right after they're tested, but also to find out their result?
Yeah, so with the assessment centers, we are encouraging an online portal, which actually you can go on yourself if you're electronically savvy, and I know a lot of people are, even our elderly population, and you'll be able to see that test result right away. Otherwise, public health will certainly notify you around your test result.
And I guess especially just
as well.
yes, it sounds like indeed. Is it still the case where someone who's positive obviously is going to hear right away, someone who's negative may hear a little bit, there might be a little bit of a delay in reporting their result?
Yes, there might be a little bit of a delay. Yes, that's right.
So I guess that's the thing right now. Is a very, is this, I'm sure, a positive move, the fact that more testing is now available, where initially it was sort of the most at risk or the people who are having mild to medium symptoms?
Yes, at first when we were providing opportunity for access for testing, it was certainly symptomatic patients or individuals or residents. Now, there's ability to open it up and see if you're positive or negative, which also helps public health in the contact tracing that they do, and to understand exactly how this virus is spreading.
So I guess to wrap this up, Laurie, I guess that's the key we're talking about here is now the Premier called for more widespread testing. This is available to people who have symptoms or are concerned that they could be exposed.
That's right.
Well, Laurie, we appreciate the time. We know it's a busy time over at the Bluewater Health, so thank you for your time and keep up the great work there.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this call.
A long-term care facility in Sarnia, Lambton has been put into outbreak for the second time. Lambton Meadowview Villa in Petrolia has had a staff member test positive for COVID-19. One resident or one staff member with a positive test puts the home into outbreak status. Lambton Meadowview Villa was previously an outbreak in mid-April after a staff member tested positive at that time, but there were no further positive tests and the outbreak was declared over. In this case, the staff member has not been at work since last Tuesday and has had no contact with other staff or residents since displaying symptoms. Overall in Sarnia, Lambton, 251 people have tested positive for the virus. That's up 3 from the last update. 3 more people are considered recovered as well, so that leaves the overall number of active cases in the region at 50. The provincial government has released a report on the state of 5 Toronto area long-term care homes that the Canadian Armed Forces had been assisting with during the pandemic. It found residents being neglected, insect infestations, contamination due to lack of cleaning, and improper use of personal protective equipment.
I'm putting everything on the table here. The public needs to know exactly what I found out yesterday afternoon. After the press conference, I got briefed on this, and it was gut-wrenching. When I say gut-wrenching, I was up, and I'm sure everyone was up, I was up all night thinking of this. The families that go in there, and they see their loved ones, and they see this report. I get it. It's heart-wrenching. You want to go in there and get your loved one and take them out and protect them. And when COVID came into these homes, not only did it affect patients, it affected workers, and a lot of workers were scared to show up to work. We had to get other people in. We had to get volunteers. We had to get public health in. And there was a crisis. And I've said there's a crisis in these long-term care homes. The question is, how are we going to fix the problem? We will fix the problem, but it's unacceptable. I think it's appalling. I think it's disgusting what has happened. Just the dignity of these patients in long-term care not being cleaned. These are just standard operating procedures to clean someone. When you feed them, you lift them up. I'm not an expert in health, but I know when you feed someone, you lift them up and feed them. It's so disturbing when I read this. It was hard to get through. It was the worst report, most heart-wrenching report I have ever read in my entire life, ever. But we're gonna fix this, Travis. I promise you, and I promise the people of Ontario.
The 5 long-term care homes that were the subject of this report and being assisted by the Canadian Armed Forces were all in the Greater Toronto area. A coroner's inquest has been called into the death of one of the residents in the homes. Stay tuned. You're watching Sarnia Lambton Daily on your TV. Welcome back to Sarnia Lambton Daily. We know this pandemic has been difficult for many people, whether it's due to isolation, job or financial issues, homeschooling children, being overwhelmed with negative information, or many other factors. In this report, we bring you some tips for dealing with your mental health.
I am Justin, the therapist. I am a registered psychotherapist qualifying. That means that I am a professional therapist in Ontario. And I work with individuals, with couples and families. And before the coronavirus, I used to see clients in Mississauga and Guelph, but now I help lots of people over video or phone chat. And today, I'd like to talk to you about some mental health tips that you can use so that you can take care of your mental health during this pandemic, during this quarantine, during this very, very difficult time. So let's begin. The first tip I have for you is probably the most important thing. If there's anything you're going to take home from this, it's this one, which is that if you notice that you're feeling down or you're feeling depressed or you're feeling really, really worried about yourself, about maybe your health, maybe about other people's health, if you're overall not feeling as great mental health-wise as maybe you were before this pandemic, I want you to know that that is normal. That is okay. It makes sense to feel not okay. It is okay that you are not feeling okay. Allow yourself to also grieve because there's a lot of things that we're all losing. We're all losing the ability to meet in public, meet in person with loved ones. Maybe there was a concert you wanted to go to or a vacation you were planning on looking forward to, or maybe something much more serious happened. Maybe you are affected health-wise, or maybe you've lost someone to COVID-19. I want you to allow yourself to grieve. It is okay and sensible that you are upset at what you've lost. Now, of course, that is very helpful, but there's other things you can do to feel even better during this time. So what I really want you to do is to take care of yourself. Now, one thing you can do is to limit how much you're exposed to the coronavirus news. So we are so exposed every single day, 24/7. You can hear about the coronavirus, about COVID-19, about different press conferences, different news coverage, maybe even things that you read on social media. That can become overwhelming when it feels like the entirety of everything that we're consuming has to do with COVID-19. So one thing you can do is simply notice the positives that remain in this world. Even though the world has changed so much, it can be helpful just to notice that it's still sunny outside some days, and there are wonderful people out there that are helping each other. And even though everyone feels like they're at home, the world is still running and people are still doing great things. And that brings me to my next point, which is connect with people as much as you can. So although it's called social distancing, I think that's a bit of a misnomer. It's more like physical distancing. We don't necessarily have to be distant from each other socially, just physically. This is a time where I encourage you to reach out as much as you can with others. In fact, this can actually be a time where you reach out with people that maybe you haven't spoken to in some time, or maybe you can have some heart-to-hearts with people that you haven't had with in a long time. Maybe you're at home with your spouse, your kids, maybe grandkids, maybe even parents. The reality is that we are extremely social beings. Our species is the most social species in the whole planet. We are not designed to be socially isolated for long periods of time. The next thing I can recommend is to create a schedule, to keep up with a routine. Whatever it might be, it will make a big difference for you. We can get trapped in the sense of, we're just stuck at home. So you know what, whatever I can do, I can just do it tomorrow. And that can lead to feelings of sadness and hopelessness and despair and depression. But if you keep up with a schedule and make a routine, it can really lead to a lot of activity. And that can be really good for our mental health, including physical activity. Our minds and our bodies are so connected. So doing some physical activity can really help release those positive, good feeling hormones like endorphins. It can make a tremendous benefit for your mental health. And if you're stuck at home, there are plenty of videos you can watch online to help you exercise, videos that can help you if you have no equipment even. The other thing you can do is to go outside. Now, of course, it's very important to be safe and not necessarily congregate or go to public places, but even just stepping outside of your home can make a big difference to just get some fresh air. Another thing you can do is to write in a journal. During these difficult times, it's very important to have an outlet where you can share how you're feeling and talk about your feelings and process your thoughts. So if you can write in a journal, that can be helpful. Or if you don't like to write as much, you can use an audio recorder, perhaps on your smart device, or you can even video record yourself saying things, and that can be a helpful way to let out some of these thoughts. So the main big point that I want to share with you that you can be really helpful is I encourage you to go on a staycation. Now, even though we are stuck at home, a lot of us are, it doesn't have to be a negative experience. You can actually choose to do a lot of positive things that can make this quarantine much, much more enjoyable than it seems. So this is how you do it. It's important to set some goals. I invite you to ask yourself, in the next months or weeks or how long it'll take before this quarantine is lifted, ask yourself, what do I want to have accomplished by then? Maybe there are some things that you've always wanted to do or try that you didn't really have a lot of time for when people were able to go to work regularly. Maybe you want to learn a new language or learn a new instrument or take some time to really get into cooking and cook some very satisfying meals. Or maybe you want to do some gardening. If faith is important to you, maybe you wanted to spend more time praying or meditating or learning more about whatever it is you'd like to learn more about. This is an opportunity to do things that maybe you never felt like you had the time for. So I encourage you to do those. And of course, the last point is to have fun. Have a lot of fun. Have as much fun as you can, because fun is very good for your mental health. Whether that's playing board games, whether that's watching some TV that is light and entertaining, or play some video games. Apparently, the World Health Organization, one of the top officials, said that we should just play more video games. And video games can be a great way to keep your mind engaged and sharp and even connect with others. There are plenty of games that are lighthearted yet fun, where you can play online with others or play locally with people. There are some games that require you to use some movement too, so it can get some exercise. And it can be a great way to bond with people who are much younger than you or people that are much older than you. So those are my tips for today to help your mental health, to definitely first allow yourself to grieve and mourn and accept that it's okay to not be okay. Take care of yourself by limiting your exposure to coronavirus related stuff. Connect with others as much as possible. Notice the positives that are still in the world. Create a schedule, a routine, so that you can actually do some things, and have some goals of things that you would like to do throughout this quarantine, because it can actually be a very fruitful period in our lives. And of course, even if you follow all of these tips, it's possible that you're still really struggling with your mental health. That makes sense. I want you to know that there is help available. There are plenty of therapists out there that are available to provide therapy and support, including myself. I am a therapist that works with individuals with a whole plethora of mental health issues, as well as I work with couples, and I provide couple therapy, and I work with families doing family therapy. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm able to work with anyone in Ontario, and I can work doing video therapy or phone therapy. You can reach out to me at my website, justinthetherapist.com. It's very simple. Or on Facebook, just look up Justin the Therapist, or Instagram, Justin the Therapist. And if you don't work with me, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy to help you find a therapist that will fit you better. And I also want you to know that money does not have to be a barrier to therapy. Anyone who wants therapy can get therapy regardless of their budget. There are plenty of therapists out there who, like me, are willing to do therapy at a reduced rate, sometimes even do pro bono work. So help is available. And of course, if you are in a crisis, feel free to reach out to your local crisis distress line. There is at least one in every single region. So that's it for me for today, and looking forward to hearing from you.
You are watching Sarnia Lambton Daily on your TV. Back here on Sarnia Lambton Daily, our top story tonight, more assessment centers available for people looking to get tested for COVID-19 in Sarnia Lambton. In Sarnia itself, this includes the Twin Bridges Nurse Practitioner-led clinic on Christina Street, available Monday to Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m. and Saturday 9 to 2 p.m. It is preferred that people do call ahead. Also, the Central Lambton Family Health Team in Petrolia, available Monday to Friday 1:30 to 4:30 and Saturday 9 till noon. Also testing going on in the First Nations communities and up in Grand Bend as well. Once again, this is additional testing as Premier Ford was looking for more people to get tested no matter symptoms, while previously they were looking for people that had symptoms of COVID-19. But more widespread testing is now available, but it is preferred people do call ahead. Elsewhere, Premier Doug Ford, let's be honest, disgusted after a report came in about 5 long-term care homes in Toronto that had been assisted by the Canadian military.
But it's unacceptable. You know, I think it's appalling. I think it's disgusting what has happened. Just the dignity of these patients in long-term care not being cleaned. These are just standard operating procedures to clean someone. When you feed them, you lift them up. I'm not an expert in health, but I know when you feed someone, you lift them up and feed them. It's so disturbing when I read this. It was hard to get through. It was the worst report, most heart-wrenching report I have ever read in my entire life, ever. But we're gonna fix this, Travis. I promise you, and I promise the people of Ontario.
Finally tonight, Lambton Meadowview Villa in Petrolia has been put into outbreak once again after a staff member tested positive for COVID-19. That staff member has not been at work for over a week now and had no contact with residents or other staff after displaying symptoms of the virus. This is the second time Lambton Meadowview Villa has been put into outbreak. They had an outbreak with one staff member testing positive back in mid-April, but no further testing came back positive, and the outbreak was declared over on April 23rd. That's going to do it for Sarnia Lambton Daily for this Tuesday, May 26th. For all of us here at Your TV, I'm Terry Doyle. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you back here tomorrow.